A recent survey of over 2,000 people conducted by the Climate Council and Beyond Blue showed that a high percentage of people in Australia experienced at least one extreme weather event in 2019, and as a result, their mental health had been affected. I caught up with Dr. Simon Bradshaw yesterday, Director of Research for the Climate Council, to run through the statistics.
Yes, certainly. And look, I think before saying anything, we just want to express our gratitude to the hundreds of people who came forward with very powerful, very courageous stories for this study. The results were very confronting. Of those 2,000 Australians who you mentioned that we polled, 80% of them say they've experienced some form of extreme weather disaster since 2019. And of that group, more than half say that has had some impact upon their mental health. Now, this is right around the country, in our cities, in our rural, regional, and remote areas. But as you'd expect, these impacts are not felt evenly. We did see that people in rural areas, not surprisingly, were at least 1.5 times more likely to have experienced flooding since 2019. A similar story for bushfires. If we look between the states, then up in Queensland and also New South Wales, people are more likely to have experienced repeat disasters since 2019. And it's often repeat disasters, flood after flood, or swinging from flood to fires that can have such a profound impact on people's well-being. So there's very important lessons here. And above all, it shows us that the climate crisis is not just about physical risks, it really is impacting heavily on our mental well-being and on the fabric of our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we said before, you have done the survey in collaboration with Beyond Blue, and we talk about people like farmers, for example, who are resilient, but it's just time and time again, as you are seeing, that these events are happening in some places. It is relentless. What kind of an impact has this had on people's mental health?
We've heard stories of symptoms of anxiety, depression, of post-traumatic stress disorder. And we should point out, as you've alluded to, communities can be tremendously resilient. And we also heard, the most inspiring stories of everybody clubbing together to help each other out. And of course, we see that all the time. But the sheer scale of duress that communities are being put under due to extreme weather, driven by climate change, does mean that there's an urgent need for more support, more mental health services, both in the wake of disasters, but also long-term, because these challenges can play out over a very long time. And the other key message here, recognizing this mental duress communities are feeling, is that we have to do more, both to adapt to the impacts of climate change that we know are coming, but also to be taking much stronger action this decade to drive down our emissions and deal with the root cause of the problem. And that's fundamental to protecting all of our mental well-being over the long term.
And Dr. Bradshaw, can you tell us how much the planet has warmed and what the impact could be if temperatures rose even further?
So at this stage, the planet as a whole has warmed by around 1.2 degrees. Australia actually a bit more than that. We're warming more than the global average. And I think all Australians now have felt the very real impacts of that. Longer, more dangerous fire seasons, deadlier heat waves, more damaging floods. Now, owing to past inaction, things will continue to escalate over the coming years and decades because there's a momentum and inertia in the climate system. So we have to adapt to and prepare for worsening extremes. But key message here always is that so much is still in our hands, and it's up to us how bad things get. And really every investment now in driving down emissions and moving beyond fossil fuels is setting us up for a brighter future. It's an investment in our future mental well-being. And it is the scale and pace of actions now and through the 2020s that are so critical and are going to be the difference between a future in which we can all thrive and one that becomes very dangerous for us indeed.